Good afternoon, Ngozi Talk Shows family. It's Nomsa here at Ngozi Talk Shows. Find your own voice, lead from within. With me today, Carol Ann Cooper. Hi, Carol Ann. We are grieving today. We are talking about the secret to moving through grief. You chose this topic. Anyway, the audience want to know, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good, thanks. I'm bouncing back up again. You know how you sort of on this roller coaster of life.
So you chose this topic, the secret to moving through grief. Could you please explain to the audience why you chose the topic?
I like the word moving. You know, there's it's about movement, and grief can come up in lots of different ways. We always think of it as just, you know, the death of a relative or a friend, but grief can be felt in many other ways through other circumstances as well, which we don't actually realize. And I know I didn't actually realize until I read it or thought about it at some point and realized that actually when I left teaching, there was a grief going on there. You know, something I never ever thought I would leave was teaching. I thought that was me in for the long haul because I loved teaching, that life had other ideas, and it just meant that I had to leave teaching to pursue another avenue that had opened up for me. But even though it was a choice, and it was when I chose happily, there was underneath that an element of grief of leaving that job that I loved. And so, yeah, I think it's something worth exploring and being able to move through grief and fully understand what grief is, how to move through, and that actually, you know, heal the pain of grief, because it's painful and it hits everybody in different ways, you know. And I think it's that understanding that's important to realize that actually there is no normal, and I hate this quotation thing, but it's like normal way of, you know, grief. It does this and then you do that, and, you know, it's like no. So yeah, just thought it'd be good to explore.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Carol Ann, because we normally think that grief is all about losing someone, and which is not true. Grief can come in so many ways, like you are saying. It could be business, it could be finances, it could be someone having a broken heart through relationship. It could be so many things, or a disappointment. Is a grief. When our expectations are not met, like, or even if we have to walk away, like you had a teaching job that you've worked really hard all your life, and then you're walking away from it, even though it's a choice sometimes. Is still a grief, because it is something that you have to let it go, something that you have created a relationship with, and you've built a relationship with people in that cycle, and you've created memories, and then now all of a sudden you have to leave those memories behind and cherish them as a memory, not as a journey, like you're walking through it. So it's a big decision when you have to move away, and sometimes people can take it. It can be okay, but sometimes people can struggle to go through that and find a breakthrough way moving forward. And also, when it comes to grief of losing someone, like what you're saying, Carol Ann, the response, we all respond to it differently. And I've met people who have lost their loved ones. They're all telling me different story, but the pain It can feel like your life has been taken away from you. It can feel like there's something that you've been robbed your life. It can feel in so many ways. And or sometimes you can respond, go to numbness, not respond at all, lose all our feelings, and just go freeze, not knowing what to do, how to move forward. Which is what I used to do. But now, since I understand that actually the people that we lose, or when someone dies, their soul, they go to heaven and the body stays on earth. It doesn't mean that they are actually dead, their soul leaves. So that gives me closure, knowing that one day I'm going to meet, if I do go to heaven, hoping that I'm not going to go to hell. If I do go to heaven, I'm hoping that I'm going to meet those that I've lost if they're there. So that gives me comfort. So what advice can you give someone right now who is watching and they have lost their loved ones, and there are so many things that are happening around the world. I watch the news on Google. Some people, they take their lives, and leaving family confused, without answers of why did they do that. And some, mostly in America, too much shooting. Other countries, there's so much shooting. Someone just comes in and shoot people. So what advice can you give someone right now who is actually looking for answers from their loved ones, that they just need that closure? And I don't know how. They've gone to numbness.
Yeah. Well, gone to numbness. They've gone into some space that they perhaps feel they're never ever going to get out of. And I think it's that thought that holds you there. You feel like you'll never be able to move on. And it's not knowing how to move on, but it's also that thought that you'll never be able to move forward. You'll never move out of this space that you're in. And actually, do you want to? Because it's like there's also, you've lost that person. If you actually lose this pain, is it another level of losing them again? Because all of a sudden, are you then forgetting them? And so it's being able to face it full on. It's being able to actually acknowledge what has happened and come to actually accept not what's happened, but accept where you are at within the process of what's happened, what you're feeling. Acknowledge and accept what you are feeling, and recognize whether there's any beliefs that are running that are making you feel wrong because you're not maybe following the normal path that you hear you should be following. Maybe you've gone numb, maybe you haven't cried. Not everybody needs to cry or has to cry. That again is just another part of the process. And the process is not linear. It's not a case of you go from this to this to this to this, done. You could be anywhere within that process. You could jump from one emotion to another, or another way of being within that grief process. And you may not feel certain aspects of it. So it's allowing yourself to actually acknowledge that there's grief here, and that maybe you're not even sure that it is grief because you don't actually know what grief is. It may be the first time you've really felt grief in this way. So just explore it and be with it and acknowledge the pain. And recognize that actually pain is only an emotion. So what's the emotion? And if you ask yourself that question, you can then work with the emotion, which then helps the pain. But first step is to accept that there is grief here. You've lost somebody. And however you lost them is you lost them. And recognize what the emotion is that's with you. Because again, it depends in what circumstances you lost them, and therefore what is coming up for you. So something that I read by William Shakespeare, he said, give sorrow words. The grief that does not speak knits up the o'erwrought heart and bids it break. So there's something about actually speaking it out, or maybe just writing it, giving it words, giving it expression in some way. But giving it words, you know, if this pain were words, what might they be? Speak them out, write them out. Give them some expression. So that's one thing that you could start with. But it is certainly accepting the fact that grief is here and acknowledging it.
Giving expression. I know, Carol Ann, I think when you say giving it expression, that makes it better because you can identify and speak to that anger. I work well when I'm speaking to things. I find that it becomes really, really easy when I'm going through something and when I'm speaking to it. But if I try to ignore it, it makes things worse. What Carol Ann is saying, please just take that advice and speak to it. And also try to identify when does the pain, because sometimes the pain can come when we are thinking of something, or when we feel that, or sometimes people blame God. Some people go to this blaming mood where they will start blaming God. Where was God when all this happened and stuff? Or sometimes some people, they'll go into a place where they've accepted death, but they just need to know that their loved ones are okay in heaven. And you can actually speak to God in heaven if you wanted to. You can ask the heavens to open, because what happens is God created the earth. So that means when somebody says, I don't believe in God, I believe in the universe, or I believe in earth, I believe in Mother Earth. God is actually the Mother Earth, is the womb, his womb created the earth. So you cannot actually speak to the earth, or you can ask the heaven to open so you can speak to God and give you the signs of whether your loved ones, they are okay, or sometimes it might be the soul is still on earth and they have unfinished business. So some people decide to remain, mostly when somebody's struggling with grief. When you are struggling with grief, you're holding your loved ones to go, because they feel that they need to be here to help you, and they feel that they can tell you that they are okay. So when you keep grieving and grieving and grieving, but if you actually work through the grief and actually release their soul from your heart, and then speak to God to open heaven or the earth speaks. The earth has feelings, the earth has emotions. You can speak to the earth, and it will respond to you and let you know whatever you want to know. All those things is something that I didn't know. When people say, go for a walk, I didn't know that they are actually saying, go and enjoy the earth. The earth is just there for you to, the nature is there for you to enjoy. Actually, our moods, what we bring to the earth will respond with how we are, or it would just be silence. The earth's voice, it can be silence. So you get to choose how you want to move forward with your grief, but it's not something that is easy. It's something that you have to be prepared. I grieved for my dad for maybe 7 years, because I didn't have the knowledge that I can release him. I had questions. I didn't blame God. I love God so much. I didn't blame him, but I just felt that pain of living without him in a way that when somebody tries to say, no, sir, I'm there for you, I would just, sometimes I get angry and feel that they're trying to replace my dad. And even today now, I've grieved my grief. I moved on, but I've realized that there are things that he had an assignment for me as his daughter. And I feel that no one can actually replace my dad. And like in my culture, we have a culture where your father would do this and your mother would do this. And when my family comes in and they want to do a culture that is meant to be done by my dad, I'm like, whoa, I only have one dad. So I don't think that is right. Now it's not here. Let me ask God if he can actually do this for me, because I just feel that nobody can replace anyone. I have Carol Ann here at Ngozi Talk Shows. I can have a speaker who is brilliant, who is beautiful, but they will never take Carol Ann's place. So that's how I look at people, that any person that comes into my life, when I have a relationship with them, I always feel that no one will ever take that place for them. And if you look at grief and just define it yourself, how do you want to define that grief? How do you want to move forward with it? It's not an easy thing. We tend to compare Penny to other people. Like maybe Carol Ann can lose somebody, maybe somebody. Your mom died, Carol Ann, did she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's say, how long ago?
Oh, 6-7 years ago now. I've lost
Oh,
track
okay.
of time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a long time.
My dad was like 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may find you when you speak about your parents, they've died, but when you speak about them, there's no bitterness, there's no anger, you've let them go, but you've met someone else who lost their parents the same length as you 7 years ago, and they're still bitter. So grief is how we respond.
Yeah. And actually staying bitter doesn't help you.
No.
Yourself. And
no.
it health-wise, it doesn't help you. I actually, I feel really blessed because I was able to come to a place where I actually knew that my mum was actually going to go. It was the beginning of the year. I had a dream where my dad came to me and said, you need to let your mum go. I was distraught. It was like, no, Dad, I can't. But I realized that I needed to let her go. So that year, there was a lot of things happened that I realized I was going through that process of letting mum go. And then in the October of that year, I had another dream where I woke up one Sunday morning and literally was so beside myself. I didn't know what to do. I just felt like I was leaving my body, because I'd had a dream that my mum had died and I couldn't speak to her on the phone anymore at night. And that realization hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, no. And I was panicking. I was in a real state of panic. And it was through a friend of mine that then we used to speak a lot and help each other with healing. I contacted her and she was talking with me and helping me to talk through it and help me to come back into my body and leave that panic. But I've never felt panic like that before. And I certainly wouldn't want to again, because it's like, I just didn't know what to do with myself. But part of me, in a sense, I'd gone through that realization of what it was going to be like when my mum died, that I would not be able to ring her in the evening like I used to. And so I think it prepared me. And the Monday before she actually went, I had another process. It was a journey process where I was putting a part of me behind me and went, I can't do this anymore. It's killing me. I have to move on myself, and realized that I was also, in a sense, doing that with my mum, that responsibility and letting go. And in that moment of me moving forward, I was aware of so much support behind me. It was incredible. And that actually the Thursday of that week, when my mum did actually die, I wasn't able to be with her, but I was with her. I actually connected with her the moment she died. I was connected with her on a spiritual level. And I heard it go, I have to go now. And it's like, it's okay, Mum, you can go. And that's always stayed with me. It's really powerful that I actually had that connection with her at the end. Did it stop me going through any grieving? No. I've still gone through a grieving process, but in a different way, because I was able to be much more present to the fact, okay, mum has gone. And she's with Dad. She was with me dad again, which is what she wanted. So we all experience things differently. And it's actually that connection that I had with my mum at the end that's helped me a lot, because there have been times where I've gone into that space of, oh, I want my mum. I missed you, Mum. I want you. I want that physical. That's, both mum and dad. It's that having them in the physical locality and being able to touch and speak. That's the missing, and that's the grief. And the grief is about loss, and it's that loss of having them in this physical world. And so what I've actually done is allowed myself to be with that, acknowledge that grief and that sadness, but then work through it and go, guide me, because I know that they're connected with me on a spiritual plane. They are connected. They are communicating. And I've asked for the ability to be able to understand their communication in that different way. And it's coming slowly, but that's what gives me strength to keep going and to then bounce back up again out of that moment of grief and sadness and loss. It does, we deal with it all differently. And again, it depends how you lose them. And for me, even though because there's the anniversaries, so one way of helping yourself to move forward is actually plan for all the anniversaries. There's always that first time after the death of that loved one, the first time of a birthday, a first time of maybe going on holiday or somewhere you've been, or Christmas, or they're usually the hardest to deal with. So the best thing to do is to plan forward and create maybe some ceremony or ritual for them that helps you to celebrate their life and connect and maybe make those moments less painful. But for me, I found that I remember, okay, that's Mum's birthday, and oh yeah, Mum's there, but because I feel she's still with me in a different way, I'm not actually finding myself making a lot out of it anymore. It's not like I have to go and do something or create a ritual about it. It's just that I feel she's here, and I just have that fleeting, okay, it would have been her birthday, or this was, Dad's birthday, or this was their wedding anniversary, but it's just a fleeting thing now, because I feel like there's much more acceptance there. So again, it depends yourself how you manage to deal with it, the nature of how it happened. Because even with my dad, before he went, I was with him the night before he went, and then I had to leave. He'd gone into a hospice. And I thought I was going to see him again the next week, but I guess something in me knew I wouldn't. But I was very much connected to him in a spiritual way. And so I know that I supported my dad on his journey out of this world spiritually. In the way I see it was helping him go to the light beyond the light. I used to sit and meditate with him, and he'd fall asleep, and I'd feel that connection with his soul, and could feel him slowly sort of settling down and moving on. And then we'd wake up and he'd look at me and say, "That was you, wasn't it? You sent me to sleep." And it was like he was present again, and he had that humor back. And so that's what I remember of my dad, rather than the sadness he's not here. I like to remember that incredible connection that I had with him at his last sort of time of being here. So it's, and I know that's not very often possible, because maybe someone's just taken away from you just like that, and without any warning. And I think that's possibly sometimes hardest to deal with. Even though, when someone is dying and they die, it still hits you hard. But when it's a sudden, out of the blue, that I'm not sure how that feels. So that must be, again, it's something different. And you have to acknowledge where you're at with that. And as you were saying, blame can come into this whole process of grieving. It's someone else's fault. And God, why did you make this happen? Why did you let it happen? It's not fair. And but it is important to work through that. Speak it out. Find somebody else that has gone through the grieving process, because sometimes you feel like you're on your own. And actually, as I was reading about this is one of the biggest things that actually that so many people have experienced in one way or another. That actually there is something that you could come together with a group or with one person that can actually help you to get through this. So it can be shared, someone that understands and isn't just going to, push down and make you push down your feelings, but someone that can actually just be with you and help you to feel what's there to be felt and move forward. It is important to move forward and recognize if you're holding on and not willing to let go. That's when it gets, that bitterness can set in, that resentment. And then just notice what happens to your health and your mind and your whole way of being. And your life just closes down. You have to remember that that's not what God wants for you. He wants you to be able to learn through this journey. There's something here to learn. And I think possibly this is one of the the things about being a human being on this planet in the physical form, is something here for us to learn. Is those emotions and grief being part of it? Because I believe that when we're not here and we're in spirit form, we're so connected. We're just one. There is no loss. Those things don't exist. So I think we've come here to experience this. So allow ourselves to experience it and learn from it. And because I also believe if we don't learn from that experience, when we come back again, because I believe we do come back again, and I know not everybody believes that, but I believe that. And that is, something that I quite strongly believe, that you'll come back again, and the next time it will be even stronger. It's like, it's a lesson here to learn. So if it's quite strong now, just go, okay, so what is it I haven't yet learned that I need to learn, that I can then move on, move through this and let go. So yeah, definitely, yeah. But certainly go for a walk in nature. Mother Nature can really absorb everything, and just tree hugging, standing in trees, just standing with your feet in the grass, just being present to, the birds, the sounds, nature are healing in themselves. So I love what you were saying there, Nomsa. Just go for that walk, because you just never know when things are, your whole life's going to change. And it's a whole, just completely change your life. So there's grief there, a loss of a life that you thought you were going to have, and so, yeah, loss of a marriage,
Yeah.
where you've had plans for the future, and all of a sudden, that future no longer exists. It's like, whoa.
Plans have changed.
Plans have changed. And that's what I found hardest to get over was, oh my God, all those plans we had.
Yeah.
Gone. Yeah,
they're gone. You have to deal with pain, and it's not an easy thing to do. Some people, it's like what you're saying, Kero, and that we have to find ways of finding that closure and the breakthrough. And it's all different. It's like you've described the journey with your dad, that you had to send him off and let him go. For me, when my dad died, I was in the UK, and he was someone that I was really close to my dad. When my dad comes in, if he's the neighbors, if I'm sleeping, it doesn't matter whether it's midnight or 1 a.m., I'm up. I'll wake up, I will not go to sleep until I say goodnight to my dad. So those were the kind of relationship that we had. And both my stepdad and my dad died when I was in the UK. It was tough for me going through the pain. And then after I'm finishing with the pain, I'm just going to go with this pain where I wish I was at home, because I didn't know how to deal with things. I wish when it all happened, I was at home. And so many things that my mind do. We go into Google and start Googling things, and going to a place of sadness. The place, I never went to a place of anger, a place of sadness and shock, denial, and feeling helplessness, hopelessness, and just feeling numbness. And first I went to a denial, where when they told me that he was gone, I kept checking my phone. Anyone that I love, I keep checking my phone, thinking they're going to tell me it's a mistake. No, he's alive, or something has happened, is okay. So I'm like, maybe they've made a mistake in the hospital and things like that, and feeling overwhelmed as well. So those are the things that, but sometimes some people can feel despair, they can feel anxiety, and some people can feel all sorts of things, pains, yearning pains, or those years that they've had with their loved ones. And some people can go to guilt, or what else do people, isolation. Some people can isolate themselves to other people. And there's so many things that people can do. But I'm glad that when I hear you saying, sometimes you have to know yourself and to be grateful through that journey with that person that you love, because when you are grateful and cherish the memories of the times that you spend with that person, it makes a big difference. And oh, where's my thing? Yeah, it makes a big difference. And the little things that we take for granted, they make a big difference. And also the memories. You can go to memories, the pictures, and just play with them. I see my dad there with the pictures, these pictures. And sometimes I'm like, I wonder what you're up to in heaven. Or you tell God to remember me, remind him to remember me. So all sorts of things. You could do all sorts of things to remember your loved ones, as long as something that can connect you to your loved ones. I'm not sure. Some people always suggest to people to go to a medium to connect with their loved ones. I'm not sure whether that actually works. For what I know now, I think if it was before, I'll believe that it works. How they connect people, because when the dead person, when the medium work, they work with through the graveyard. So I'm not sure if they actually connecting with that person. I don't know how it works. So that is something that I wouldn't give anyone advice, because I don't know how it works. And but I just connect with that person with God. I just say connect with God. And also what I've realized as well, that when you miss your loved ones, sometimes, because God is God, when he comes, he may come with your loved ones as well, their memory, and to show you that, yes, they are happy in heaven, they are okay. So you just have to be aware of what is going on at that moment and just work on the grieving properly. Sometimes it doesn't help to get a professional person, because when you get somebody who deals specific with grief, you will be able to actually deal with the things properly, the grief properly. I didn't go to a therapist because at the time I thought I was a very strong person. I was going to be okay, but I was wrong. So I didn't deal with it properly. But you have this relationship that you had with your dad, where from the beginning you were meditating together and opening that door for him to actually go. So that relationship, that thing, that journey that you guys went through is completely different, where when someone goes, you're like, oh, he's gone. And then you're like, you're crying, but you know that you have let them go. So I think that is different. And for those who are struggling with grief, just get a professional help. Not every therapist can actually deal with a grief properly. Mostly is word of mouth. And those who have good reviews as well, just try to do your research. Because grieving, mostly finances. Some people grieve through finances when jobs. There's so many people were grieving during lockdown when jobs were not going well, business is not going well. That's another grief, losing something. And that is something else that people have to continue realize that when you're going through that loss, it is a grief. And you are grieving and losing something, that a memory that, because when you, let's say you have a business, things are going well, and then if things change, circumstances change, that means you've gone to being okay and then to a loss. So that is a loss of something. So allow yourself to grieve without the blame. Some people go into a blaming mode, blame themselves. If I would have known, if I would have done this, but no one knows the future unless if we ask God himself. But also that is the part of life of learning. When we lose something, we have to create memories. What did we learn from that journey? And then build more and more and more. Get creative. Instead of going to a blaming mode and start blaming ourselves or blaming the coaches and stuff, just sit down and where can I start? Maybe that business went because you needed to get more creative. So just get creative or relationship. The relationship ends, is a grief. It's a never-ending grief, because if you don't deal with it properly, there are some people who met their spouse when they're in their 20s, now they're in their 40s, they still judge a man based on the date that the person that they've dated when they were in their 20s. That men cannot be trusted, women cannot be trusted. That means they're still grieving. Yeah. What advice can you give someone, Carol Ann, who is grieving through marriage?
Find a way to let it go, because actually you are suffering because of it. So what is it that has you still hold on to it? And, 20 odd years later, you're still harping back to that. Then your health will suffer. Your mental health is suffering. Your relationships, you're pushing potential relationships away that could actually give you happiness and joy and give a fulfillment that you've never experienced before. So my advice is to actually, acknowledge that that's what you're hanging on to, and ask yourself the question, for what reason am I still hanging on to this? It could be a form of protection. You feel like you need to protect yourself. Well, actually protect yourself from what? From hurt, from pain. There's always going to be some hurt or pain in some way. So it's allowing yourself to be able to deal with hurt, deal with pain in a more effective way, rather than keep pushing it away or shoving it down and ignoring it. Where is it? I've read somewhere there is. Can't remember, I read it somewhere. Okay, the pain will go away. This is a myth. The pain will go away faster if you ignore it. No, it'll only make it worse in the long run.
No,
you need
no,
to face it. You need to deal with it. It is a myth by ignoring it. And so if that is your way of dealing with it, is to ignore it, there needs to be a shift of mindset, because actually ignoring it is not the best way to go. In the beginning, if you want to ignore it, if that's how you feel, you can cope, but recognize where then that becomes a habit, and that coping strategy actually outlives its purpose. In the moment, it helped you to get through, and that's okay. So it's about going back to that part of you, that age that made that decision. I need to ignore this and say, thank you. You kept me safe. You kept me, in a way that I was able to then keep moving forward. And now that actually doesn't serve me anymore. But what you did was great. It really helped. Thank you. And give that younger you a big hug and really acknowledge them and thank them. And then invite them to grow up with you inside too, because you've got resources at your fingertips that you didn't have then. You've got other ways that that you could deal with pain. But because that younger you is so holding on, that's the part of you that stops you really utilizing the resources that you have now and hearing new possibilities and new ways of moving. So invite that younger you to grow up inside and to now explore these new ways together and see what can open up. But it is about actually acknowledging it. Again, I come back to acknowledging where you're at. What is serving you and what is not serving you. But don't make it wrong. It served you in that moment. Now you need to face it. Stop ignoring it and face it. And I think this is the secret to moving through grief, and healing your pain is facing it, is acknowledging where you're at with it, what you're going through. Speak about it, write it out, and acknowledge this is how I'm dealing with it. Or this is how I dealt with this all those years ago. Acknowledge it first and accept it. And then say, right, okay, so what can I now do to move forward? So that really, I think, is the secret to being able to move through grief. You know, what's next for me? What phase of grieving am I in? Because depression is also a phase of grief. Have you become so depressed? Is it a part of the grieving process that you haven't connected up with? And maybe that realization can help you to then move out of the depression and move into acceptance. And so, yeah, there are 5 stages of grief. There's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, there's depression, and acceptance. But you don't go in that order. You might miss some of them out, or it might just be you experience 1 or 2 of them. But it's come to acceptance and recognize that sometimes you'll go back into other aspects of it because something will trigger you. And but for me, I think it's the important thing is being able to give it words, speak about it, and let yourself feel whatever emotion you are feeling. I remember when my mum's dad died, that grandfather, mum told me, and that night I was in my bed and I was sobbing. I was so upset. I was only about 7, I think, at the time, 7 or 8, something like that. And my mum came in and she stopped me crying. And I can't remember her exact words, but somehow she was getting me to stop crying. And then she was saying, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Basically saying she shouldn't have told me because she said, I didn't realize that you'd understand. And I remember thinking, of course I understand. I'm never going to see my grandfather again. But she stopped me crying. And it took a long time. It was when I started on this personal development journey that I unlocked that and was able to let that have its full flow and feel that sadness and cry and feel that anger that I felt towards my mum, saying, of course I understood it. And recognize, okay, that was just how she dealt with it. She didn't realize. But don't stop somebody crying. Don't make them cry because you feel that they have to cry. If they're angry, let them be angry and be safe with that anger and be able to express it in some way. And that is something that's not dealt with effectively when children are experiencing grief, especially in school. And interestingly enough, we've had this topic today, and something has come up today with one of my grandchildren and a friend of hers who is coming up to the anniversary of her mum's, the first year of her death. There's another child at the school who has been, so for want of a better word, bullying her, but goading her, taunting her with things about her mum. And today, that child, my friend, my granddaughter's friend literally lost it and went for this other child. She's now been excluded from school because it wasn't dealt with. It hasn't been dealt with in a way that has allowed her to be heard, So how can we support young children? And especially if they don't know how to express it, they'll probably say, oh, I'm fine. Well, actually, when they're not, but recognize the little signs, listen to what they're saying, you know, is there's probably, there are clues very often in what they're saying. Listen to them and get them, you know, and empower them to speak out what's going on. So I know apparently my granddaughter's going to have a talk with one of the teachers apparently, and yeah, have a few words and let them know what's been going on to get to this point. And so, which is lovely because she can help in that way. I just feel really proud of her to know that she's got that maturity to say, look, and feel she can have a conversation and support her friend in that way. So, and it's not just necessarily the loss of a parent. You've got other, you know, loss of a pet, loss of a friend, or moving, you know, from where you used to live. Very often you sell your family home and you have to move somewhere else. That as well can have an impact on children and on yourself. So there's a lot of things that can cause grief. Loss of health is another one that perhaps we don't realize, and I hadn't realized either, that you could be grieving for the health that you once had, that you no longer have. So, you know, how are you dealing with that grief? Because is that grief compounding your health problems that you're having? You know, that's another thought. It can get quite complex, can't it, Nomsa?
Yeah. Yeah, I think things can get, there are some people that go through everything. They go through grief, they go through health, they go through so much. And you just have to learn to take good care of yourself. And when you take good care of yourself and never compare your life with anyone, or blame God or blame yourself, maintain that healthy diet, because when your loved ones, they leave you behind, all they want for you is to enjoy your life on earth. They don't want you to feel any bad about them being gone. They want you to continue that life. And if you notice that when you live in the present moment where you stay focused, you can connect with God. I always say, whatever I need, I can connect with God and just send that peace for them, because, or you can receive that peace, the message to say, no, this person is okay. They are in heaven. They are okay. So that's all you need, that peace, that closure. But when anger is there, the blame is there, and when you miss, it's okay to miss them. And also, when you are missing that person, you got to remember how they died. If they've died through illness, what are you doing when you actually angry? That means you when you get angry for a long time, you end up having illness. Unforgiveness is illness. When you go through grief, that means you have to forgive. Somehow there's got to be unforgiveness. There's got to be letting go. And there's got to be, when you're letting go, there's got to be that acceptance, where you accept that person is dead, and then you move on. You don't forget the memories. No one will ever forget the memories they had with the person, but you can actually cherish the memories. I cherish the memories of my dad. Like my children, I talk to them about my dad. And if I speak to them, I'm like, Kayla, who's your granddad? She's like, my granddad Witness and David and Paul. She knows she's got 3 granddads. And also talk to them, talk to your children. The memories are there for you to actually, or if you don't have kids, talk to your loved ones, the people that are around you, because those memories is the memories that you had. But if you have had bad memories, not everyone has good memories with their loved ones. You got to look after number one. Some people have been rejected their parents. and those parents die and they're still looking for answers. I listened to one of the pastors say, when someone gives birth to you, or when you have a father or a mother, if that person decided to walk away, or they decide not to be there for you, your upbringing, it was like they just have authority of being a parent, but after that, the person that actually raises you, they are the ones who are your parents. They are the one that you need to cherish. You cannot actually feel guilty or asking questions about why they not there as a father, or why things happened to what happened. It was like, let them deal with God. It's their sins, but you have to enjoy your life with the parents that with these, it could either be grandparents or maybe adopted parents that have decided to take you and adopt you as their own child. And it was like those parents in God, spiritually, they become your parents. But by blood, someone else who has decided not to be there. But you don't need to feel guilty. There are so many people that their childhood is not worked out like everybody else. But you have to know that you are unique. There's a man out there who is God, who sees you as his own child, who wants to see you happy. And you haven't got the talk shows here. We cannot fulfill your needs, but we can be your friend. We can help you find your own voice. We can tell you how much we love you. We can connect with you and give you the love that you want. Everything is there. Although we cannot fulfill that hole that is missing within you, you're going to have to accept it to be closed. It has to be your work. But all we can do is we can give love. We can help you find your own voice. We can help you go through grieving. And we can help you in so many ways. But you're just going to have to be the one that actually accept this love that people are giving you. I grew up with my dad. My mom got married, and they made rules that my dad looks after us, and my mom went back to school. And I had questions about it, and my mom explained to me, and my dad explained. But my dad was never a man who let another man to raise his own child. So, which I respect. And I was so happy that I was raised by my dad, not both of them, because I would have become something else. Maybe, I don't know my destiny, what would have become. But I said to God, I'm grateful that I have these people in my life. I can go to my mom, and I have parents there. I've got two parents there. I can come to my dad. I have two parents here. So that's all any human being can ask for. So if you are somebody, some people, they grow up, everything is beautiful like me. And then when they're older, they blame the divorce, and then somebody's dead. They don't have answers. Ask a question before somebody dies. Ask questions. My family thinks I'm bonkers. Me, I ask questions. Honestly, Carol Ann, if I think of something with my grandparents, I ask questions. If I think of something with my mom, I ask questions. I just don't leave anything or to say, I'm not going to ask her, she's going to be hurt or anything. I always, when I ask her, she always answers me, say, yes, Nomsa this, yes, Nomsa this. Or I ask her about her grandparents, her parents, about herself. She always has happy to answer me. So if you are somebody who is relatives and you have some questions, it's painful when the silence is too loud. When you can no longer ask the questions that you always wanted to ask. When that person is gone, it's very painful. But always find ways to ask the questions, and that person will be able to help you. Carol Ann, before we leave, if anyone is watching right now and they want to know what you do, who you are, and where they can find you. Could you please tell our audience where they can find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook, Carol Ann Cooper. Excuse me. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's Carol Ann Cooper. I have a Facebook group called Get Your Book Written, because what I do is I support people in becoming more productive with their writing by connecting them with their deeper innate ability to write. So I help them to unlock that writer within, to find a freedom of writing, and especially writing their story, that painful, emotional part of their story, so that they can write it from a place of being with the emotion rather than in meltdown and the emotion taking over them. And that's very often the hardest thing to do, the hardest part of writing their story. So that's what I help them to do and assist them with that. And again, it's seeking and accepting help is important, isn't again another of the secrets to moving through grief. And actually writing your story is another healing, it's a healing journey. Writing your story is a healing journey. So aspects of grief within your journey, within your story, can help you to heal by writing it. And you never know who you might help by writing your story. I like what Elizabeth Gilbert says. Deep grief sometimes is almost like a specific location, a coordinate on a map of time. When you are standing in that forest of sorrow, you cannot imagine that you would ever find your way to a better place. But if someone can assure you that they themselves have stood in that same place and now have moved on, sometimes this will bring hope. So you reach out, you could find someone that gives you hope, but in writing your story, you could be the one that gives hope to other people.
Yes, and also reach out to others who are going through grief as well, and also be patient with yourself as well, because we tend to wanting everything to happen now. Why is not happening? Why my feelings are not changing and stuff? So just be patient, meditate, pray, speak to the nature, speak to the earth, and ask God to connect you. Some people believe in the universe. You can ask whatever, the universe or God, and just ask to connect with you, and making sure that, because if the earth speaks, that means it can tell you that everything is okay. But if your loved one's soul, they are still on earth, you'll be able to feel it, because that means that they have unfulfilled business that they need to fulfill, or maybe is guilty, or maybe they feel that they need to, there's some things, we don't know people's lives, how they lived. So it depends with their life. Some people, they're really happy to go, and some people are not ready. So it depends with what happens with your loved ones, and just try to understand that grief is not something that we can put a label and say you should feel this, we should feel this. Your body will tell you, and the people that you are surrounded with, like when you reach out to people who have gone through the loss, they'll be able to explain to you how they are able to deal with their loss, how they are able to deal with their loss, so you can create your own framework and deal with yours. Everything is just going to be different. It's never the same. Whatever you do in life is different. Carol Ann is grieving is different. When you listen to her dad, she speaks with joy that the journey, the process was smooth, but her mom was smooth, but it was never the same like her dad. So it's all different. And she always says, never make yourself wrong. Don't make your feelings wrong. We are here at Nkosi Talk Shows Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. time, UK time. Please, if you are at Nkosi Talk Shows page, you can give us some stars. It will help us to reach more people in our community. And God bless everyone and live with grace.